The city had stopped breathing. No birds. No children. No voices. Only snow. And hunger. A heavy, lifeless sky hung over Leningrad. Snowflakes fell slowly, covering the empty streets, the broken tram lines, and the frozen bodies lying along the sidewalks. The city was still alive, but it was dying. 12-year-old Anya Petrova sat beside the frozen window. She turned slowly toward her mother. Her mother was sitting on the floor, still wearing her coat. She wasn't moving. Anya touched her hand. It was ice cold. Her mother was dead. Anya walked through the frozen streets with her bread cart in her hand. The line for bread was endless. Hundreds of people stood silently in the snow. A man collapsed in front of her, and the line moved forward without him. She received 125 grams of dark, terrible bread. Anya came home. She put the small piece of bread in front of her mother. "Mama, I brought bread today," she whispered. But there was no answer. Only silence. Bombs fell from the sky. Anya ran into a dark basement. People sat pressed together, barely breathing. Next to her sat a young soldier, Mikhail. "There are almost none of us left," he whispered. Anya saw trucks driving across the frozen Lake Ladoga. They called it the Road of Life. Enemy planes attacked, but the trucks kept moving. Food, hope, survival. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into endless, silent months. Leningrad was no longer a city. It was a ghost. Shadows moved through the streets, not people. Thin figures wrapped in rags, their faces gray, their eyes empty. Some were no longer even human, only bones covered in skin, still walking, out of habit. The snow covered everything. The bodies, the memories, the past. Anya walked slowly, her legs shaking with every step. Each breath felt like glass in her lungs. Her stomach no longer growled. It had given up. Hunger had become normal. Anya passed by her old school building. Once, it was filled with children's voices, laughter, chalk on blackboards, dreams about the future. Now, the doors hung open, broken. The windows were shattered. Desks lay scattered across the floor, covered by snow. Inside, there were small bodies. Children, still sitting in their chairs. They had died during lessons, too weak to even stand up and escape when the bombing came. Anya could still see her own desk. She turned away. She did not want to remember who she used to be. The Neva River was frozen solid. Under the white ice, black water slept, cold, silent, deadly. Anya stood on the bank and looked across it. She imagined what it would feel like, to lie down forever. To let the cold take her. To sleep. No pain. No hunger. Just silence. For a moment, it felt tempting. But then she remembered Mikhail's words. "You must survive for all those who can't." She stepped back, turned around, and kept walking. Thousands were driven toward the train station. Women carrying babies. Children barefoot on stone roads. Sick elders trying desperately not to fall. Anyone who slowed down was beaten or dragged. Prayers filled the air. Names echoed through the crowd. Some voices disappeared forever. Above them, the sky was blue. Beautiful. And completely indifferent. At the station stood a row of black cattle wagons. No windows. No seats. No air. 100 per wagon. Families were pushed inside, crushed together in darkness. The metal doors slammed shut with a final, echoing sound. Mothers lifted children above their heads so they could breathe. And then the train began to move. In that moment they realized. This was not relocation. This was a journey to death. Time disappeared. Inside the wagons there was only hunger, thirst and despair. Children cried until their voices gave up. Old men died standing. Bodies remained pressed between the living. At rare stops, Guards threw in a bucket of water. Every stop meant more bodies dragged away. Every stop meant fewer voices. Only darkness remained. In the corner of one wagon, a young mother rocked slowly, holding her baby to her chest. The child no longer moved. Still she whispered a lullaby, staring into nothing. The women around her wept silently. There were no tears left. Only hollow pain. When the doors finally opened again, blinding sunlight burned their eyes. They had arrived, far from Crimea. No sea. No familiar mountains. Only dust and endless empty fields. "This is your new home," a Soviet commander said coldly. There were no houses. Only exile. The train moved for days, even weeks, without a real stop. Some people died on the way. Others simply lost consciousness from heat, hunger, and despair. When the metal doors finally opened again, it was not Crimea. There were no mountains. No sea. No familiar scent in the air. Only blazing heat, dust-filled wind, an unfamiliar, endless sky. As people stepped out of the wagons, their legs trembled. It felt as if they weren't stepping onto land, but onto another world. A young man whispered, "Are we on another planet?" They were shown old, half-collapsed wooden barracks. "This is where you will live." They were not homes. They were forgotten ruins. This land was not theirs. But there was nowhere else to go. Days passed. And then hunger arrived. In some families, one small piece of bread became the only hope for an entire day. Women were forced to work in foreign fields. Men were sent to dig canals, carry unbearable loads, cut down unknown forests. These were no longer ordinary people. They were souls fighting just to stay alive. One mother broke a tiny piece of bread into 3 parts and handed them to her children. She didn't eat her share. Her daughter asked softly, "Mother, aren't you hungry?" The mother smiled weakly. "No, my child, I am full." But we know the truth. She was not full. She was sacrificing herself, so her children could live. Months turned into years. The children now knew Crimea only through stories. At night, fathers would sit and speak in low voices. Our sea was deep blue. Our mountains touched the sky. The air smelled of salt and freedom. The children would close their eyes, trying to imagine a place. A place they could not touch. A land they had never seen. But that land lived in their blood, in their names, in their silent prayers. Crimea was no longer a place on a map. It was a memory. It was a wound. It was a dream. And they promised themselves, "One day, we will return." Years passed in a land that was never meant to be home. Graves appeared in the dry soil. Simple, nameless mounds. Left behind by people who only wanted to return. An old man knelt in the dirt, placed his hand over the ground, and whispered, "We did not choose this road, but we will choose our ending." Around him, younger faces stood in silence, the second generation of exile. They had never seen Crimea. But somehow, they loved it more than the world around them. The old man lifted a small bag of soil. Dark, precious. Soil he had hidden since the day he was taken. "This is our land," he said. "And land remembers its people." The wind carried his words into the open sky. A promise passed from one heart to another. Time moved forward. Borders changed. Empires fell. But one truth remained alive. The promise. A young boy, born in exile, stood looking toward the horizon. Beyond it, somewhere, was Crimea. His mother placed her hand on his shoulder. "One day," she said, "you will walk on our barrack again." The boy closed his eyes. And in his mind, he finally saw it. The blue sea. The high mountains. The homeland he had never known. But always carried inside. "One day, we will return."